Hi there, my name is Neil Blevins, and this discussion is called Splitting Up a Project into Bite-Sized Bits. So we're going to take a quick break from the heavy art theory that I've been posting recently, but don't worry, I'll be getting back to it shortly. But this discussion is going to be about another important thing that every commercial artist should consider, which is how to organize their art-making process. So here's a simple set of steps I go through every time I start a new project. As with many artists, I suffer from blank canvas syndrome. And when presented with a huge project with, tons of different parts, I can find myself procrastinating and doing everything except the project because it's just too big to wrap my head around. So I found that breaking it into bite-sized pieces allows me not only to get to work, but also lets me schedule the project in a much more accurate way. So first off, this is not an idea I came up with. I've read it in any number of getting organized books that are available on the market. But I'm going to show you how this idea applies specifically to my artwork. And whether it's a 2D project or a 3D project, it really doesn't matter. It's exactly the same process, which is splitting the task into smaller pieces, focus only on one piece, and then try and schedule a certain number of pieces over a certain number of hours or days so I can give my client some semi-concrete time frame on the completion of the project. So let's start in 2D, and here is a rough painting for my megastructure book project inside of Photoshop. And I now need to take this painting and do a detailed version of it, which is the final version that's going to be in the book. And it's a little bit tough to know where to start. So before I do any detailed work at all, the first thing I do is I split the painting into layers based on different elements that need to be done. So you can see here, here are all the layers for the image. There's the sky layer, and then the rear clouds, then the water, then the far city, then some closer city, the clouds in front of it, then even closer little island in front of the seastead here, and then some clouds in the foreground, and then finally a bunch of small ships that kind of buzzing around the futuristic city. So what I'll do is this original painting will be in sort of random pieces, random layers. I'll then reorganize them into layers that make sense, like these. And then what I'll do is I will put a T in front of all of them. And all this stands for is temp. So what I'm doing is I'm telling myself that all of these are temp and need to be replaced with the final high-res painted element, 3D element, or photo bashed element. So then what I'll do is I'll count the number of layers, and in this case there's 9 different layers here. And so then I say, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'll say it'll take me 3 days to do this painting. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to do 3 layers every day for 3 days. Now, of course, some of these will take less time and some will take more time. So don't worry too much if one task takes longer or shorter than you estimated. But, if you're doing 3 layers a day and you manage to complete 3 layers in a day, there's no reason not to, for example, say, okay, well, I'll do a 4th layer that day. And it also gives you that boost of confidence knowing that, hey, I managed to actually complete the thing that I wanted to do. Or if it's close to quitting time, and you've finished your 3 layers, then maybe it's time for a beer. And then here is the finished painting with all of the extra detail in there. And you'll notice that for the most part, the layers that are over here are exactly the same layers that I had in my temporary one. The difference is that the T is removed, because as each layer gets done, or at least has something that's more high-res in it, I'll remove the T, and that's kind of like my checklist. So what I'm basically doing is I'm creating a to-do list, but instead of writing the to-do list on a separate piece of paper, I'm baking the to-do list into my file itself so that it's all connected and it's really easy to see how much I still have to do. So now let's go to 3D, and this is my ink robot model from my Story of Ink book. And this is the final concept I had for the final version of the robot. And it's made up of a combination of some 3D elements, some hand-painted elements, and some photos. And now what I need to do is I need to do the final model and texture of the full 3D robot itself. And so looking at all the complexity and all the parts that I'm going to have to make, it's totally fine if your first instinct is to just run. But instead, I do this process, which is very similar to the 2D process, except this time I'm going to do it in 3D. So the very first step I do is to make a previs model, a low-res model, which looks very similar to the concept. And then once I've done that, I break it up into separate layers, just like I did in my Photoshop document. So you can see those all here. So we have the lower arms, upper arms, the chest canister, the chest, feet, groin, hands, head, legs, and then the weapon that's on his back. And in this case, instead of doing the T underscore, I'm doing ink low, but it's the same idea, and that is to define these as being the low-res versions, which then I'm going to replace each and every one of these with a high-res version. So just like in 2D, I count the number of layers, and there's 10 of them. Now, since I made this model at night after doing my day job, I decided to model 1 layer per night for a total of 10 nights. And again, some of these layers took 2 nights to complete, like the chest was complex and big, so it took a longer amount of time. And some just took a couple hours. But the goal here is to continue to push yourself forward by giving yourself obvious small goals that bring you along for the entire project. So I started on the head. That was the first part I did. And while working on the head, I forgot about any other part of the body. I was just focused on doing that head. And once I got it done, then I moved on to the chest and totally focused on that. And then, of course, once I finished all the parts, I did a few days of tweaking on the entire model. But at that point, the tweaking is easy because all the hard work of getting all the main stuff is already done. Now let's take a real quick look at the final model. As I mentioned, I finished the head first, so let's hide the simple head, and then let me show you the final head, which is here. And you'll note that for the final head, it's actually 3 layers instead of 1. And that's fine because, of course, your final model is always going to have different layers than your original model. But again, the idea is you take this 1 layer here and you try to get that done in 1 day. And the number of final layers that ends up being created is not the issue. The issue is to make sure you get one of these done. And so let me just show you the rest of the model. And there you go. So piece by piece, I took the low-res model and replaced it with the high-res geometry and then did my tweaks. So in conclusion, the steps are, number 1, make a rough version of your final piece of art. Number 2, split it into smaller tasks and use the software's layer system to make a digital to-do list. Number 3, count the number of layers and give an estimated number you can do per day. Number 4, focus on each separate task, completely neglecting the others. And don't worry too much if one task takes longer or shorter than you estimated. And then number 5, do a tweaking pass to all the separate elements that you've finished. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting and consider trying to use this in your own workflow. And next week I'll get back to doing some more composition theory stuff. But I just wanted to take a quick little break and explain this process, since I've seen a couple of people struggle with some of this and I've had a few questions about it, and it seems like it might be helpful to you guys. So anyway, thanks again, and if you want more art tutorials, go to neilblevins.com and go to the art lessons section. Or if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please do so, and you'll be notified the next time I upload a new video. Thank you very much.